The Plague God has a strong following within the Black Legion. His putrid touch is evident throughout the ranks of its warriors. Under the dominance of Skyrax Slaughterborn, the Lord Corruptor, the Nurglites have converted many to their cause. In battle, the Bringers of Decay are abundant plague carriers and heralds of contagion, sowing the seeds of infection and sickness. Even other warbands of the Black Legion will have little to do with the Bringers of Decay, repelled by the blessings of the Plague God they bear and the pervasive stench that follows them.
Hey everyone, Guy from MIDWINTERMINIS here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint up the Bringers of Decay. If you're anything like me, you bought Dark Imperium, you bought Shadowspear, and you've been waiting for the right Traitor Legion or colour scheme to jump out at you. If only there was a way you could combine both the Death Guard miniatures and the Black Legion models, do a little bit of easy kit bashing, unify them with a cool, pretty simple paint scheme, and declare death to the False Emperor. Well, that's what this video is all about. To make sure I had enough parts to go around, I also got hold of the new Chaos Space Marines kit, as well as some cool custom parts from Kromlech, gross pauldrons, gnarly helmets, and disgusting power packs. Combining all these kits together will let me build 27 Nurgle-themed Black Legion. Here are the first 5 I created with a bit of quick messy kit bashing. This guy has a Plague Marine body, Black Legion arms, bolter and power pack, and a Kromlech pauldron. This one has a Black Legion body, but a Plague Marine's bolter arm, as well as a Kromlech head and power pack. I also used a spare Tactical Marine close combat weapon arm too. This guy is pretty much all Black Legion, apart from the Kromlech helmet and pauldron. They don't have to have loads of nurgly things, just a couple is often enough. And this plasma gun bearer is all Plague Marine, apart from the Black Legion helmet and power pack. Finally, this is probably the most converted. Black Legion body, Death Guard power pack and bolter arm, Kromlech helmet and pauldron, a Tactical Marine's left arm, a Bloodletter's claw hand, and an unfortunate Eldar's head being dragged along for the ride. Now, if you've got any flat armour panels on your models that you'd like to quickly nurgle up, you can use the PVA and superglue trick to create some gross rotting skin effects. Simply brush on some PVA, drip a bit of superglue on it, and use a cocktail stick to disturb the surface a bit. It dries almost instantly and hardens and creates a really disgusting organic texture. To start off the painting, I used a black primer spray to give all the models a quick undercoat. Some of those awkward recesses will probably have dodged the spray, so get in there with your brush and black paint to make sure all the nooks and crannies are totally black. It can often be a bit hard to see what you're doing when you're working on entirely black models, so in the next step we're going to dry brush a unique colour all over them. I'm going to mix VALLEJO Light Grey Green, not to be confused with VALLEJO Green Grey, in a 1:1 ratio with CITADEL Balthasar Gold to create a dull, tarnished metal colour. Give every model a dry brush, but try to leave a little bit of that black in the recesses. Now, as you can see, it actually looks pretty nice already. Mixing metallics with non-metallic colours can give you really interesting tones. Now I'm going to use VALLEJO's Black Metal to paint the large armour panels inside the dirty gold trim. You can be fast and messy with this, we're not trying to be accurate. This will just subtly change the tone of the armour once the next step is applied. If you don't have this particular paint, and I would totally recommend getting it because it's lovely, you could just mix gunmetal silver with black in roughly equal parts. Okay, now the black metallic armour is sorted, we're going to mix 2 cool paints together. The first is everyone's favourite cheat juice, Nuln Oil, and the second is a really cool technical paint, Typhus Corrosion. This has very fine texture in it that builds up like tarnished, neglected metal. We'll mix these 2 paints in equal parts and slather it all over the models. The only places you probably should avoid are any fabric parts like the cloaks, as the texture won't look great on them. Now, as you can see, once it's dry, you've got a really authentic looking corroded metal look with a nice bit of depth and complexity. It's dirty, but you can still see that it has a metallic shine underneath. To bring out a little bit of the detail we lost at the wash stage, and to catch some of that Typhus texture, we'll mix the grey-green gold again that we used to dry brush right at the start, and use this to just lightly catch the edges of the trim around the models. Now don't worry too much if you go on the main armour panels again, as we can fix that soon. Looking pretty nice. Disgusting, but nice. You know what I mean. Right, to darken down any of those big armour panels and fix any mistakes, use Nuln Oil and a smaller brush to get into all those armour panels and just avoid the trim. Now if you do get any on the trim, just use your finger to wipe it away quickly and try again. It's important to get these steps out of the way first, as they're the most messy, and now we can focus on bringing these models to life with details. Grab a bright shining silver, I'm using VALLEJO's Aluminium, and very lightly dry brush things like close combat weapons, chainmail and gun barrels to make them stand out against the armour. You can also use this colour to catch the little grills on the chests and masks and power packs too. You might also want to drag a little onto the very sharpest, easiest to reach areas of the trim as well. Now we're going to pull out our old favourite, Zandri Dust, and use this nice opaque khaki to paint base coats on all the fabric, bones, skulls, horns, tentacles, and the tree-like growths sticking out of their armour. It's important to thin your paint down when you do this, let it dry and apply another thin coat. This keeps the detail nice and crisp and stops it getting gummed up with too much thick paint. Once your khaki colours are down, pull out your favourite brown paint to base coat the straps, handles and pouches on each model. Next, thin down any basic red you have, and use this to paint the furniture of the bolters. Pretty much all the Bringers of Decay artwork I could find show them with black bolters, but they are already pretty monochrome, and I love 90s GW paint schemes, so red bolters it is. Again, it's much better to apply two thin coats, particularly of opaque colours, to stop any texture building up in the paint and obscuring detail. And here's how all the models look after some simple base coats. Enjoying the video so far? Do me a favour and hit that like button. I'm not sure if it even does anything anymore with YouTube's algorithm, but it makes me feel good. Now once you're happy with your base coats, grab your brown wash. I'm using Agrax Earthshade and apply this to all the bones, skulls, horns and also the bolter casing. Now I'm going to use this really awesome technical paint, Blood for the Blood God by CITADEL, to apply a fresh, wet blood effect to any gaping wounds, the blades of some of the weapons, as well as the tentacles. Now this is slightly thicker than normal paint and it dries glossy, so it'll always look gross and wet. If you think you've applied too much, you can always just wipe away a bit with your finger just to leave it in the recesses. Next, I'm going to use Screaming Skull, a bleached bone colour, thinned quite a bit to pick out the top facing and prominent parts of the bones, skulls and horns. I'll also add a little dot onto those weird pustules on the pauldrons too. By being a bit creative with the direction and size of your brushstrokes, you can also give the impression that things are made out of different materials. For example, following the direction of the fold of this cape implies a bit of movement on the model, while highlighting it at the same time. When you apply thinned light paint like this, it always looks quite stark, but you can see by going back for the second coat that when it's dried, it dulls down a lot. On the second pass, you can be a bit more sparing with your highlights. Now we're going to use yellow paint to warm up two of our previous colours and highlight different areas of the model. First we'll add it to our red to create a sort of hot orange, and use this to add a little definition to the edges and corners of the bolter furniture. After that we'll add a little bit of yellow to our brown and highlight these straps and pouches in the same way. Now I'm still doing all of these models in just one session, so cracking onto the eyes, I used Caliban Green to base coat the eye lenses on each model, as well as the coils of the plasma gun. I then added a little bit of yellow to the green and started building up this brighter colour. Add a little more yellow and highlight again, but this time focus more on one side of the lens in particular. Again, more yellow and an even smaller area highlighted. Now once you're happy with the transition from dark green to almost yellow, add some white into your greeny yellow mix, thin it nicely, and use your finest brush to carefully add a dot or two to the darker side of the lens. I basically followed all these steps on the plasma coils too, but instead of building it up with a brush, I used my airbrush to give a bit of a glow effect on the armour around his chest. To really make the central coils pop, I used a bit of thinned white paint and a very thin brush. To bring this effect together, you could use a green wash like Biel-Tan Green on the coils, making the highlights less stark and putting a bit of definition into the cracks. Last but not least, you want to paint the bases to complement the theme. I'd recommend something with a blue hue to contrast the warmer feel of the models. I simply used Drakenhof Nightshade all over my industrial bases, followed by a light dry brush of P3 Arcane Blue when it dried. Black around the rims, and I'm calling it a day for the Bringers of Decay. All 5 of these models were painted in one session, and outside of drying time I think they took around 30 to 45 minutes each depending on the level of detail they feature. Pretty speedy, and it also looks quite striking too. A nice mix of interesting, unique metal armour that has a really nice depth to it, gross quirky details, and a bit of an old school throwback to the Chaos Renegade days. A great thing about kit bashing and painting your models in this scheme is that they'll look great as both Plague Marines and Chaos Space Marines. So whatever codex you decide to play from, they'll totally look the part. Just obviously be clear with your opponent what's what before you play. Each model will probably also totally be unique to you if you mix and match the parts like this. Now before you click away and get on with your day, I just need to tell you a couple of things. First off, let's talk about music. The track playing in the background at the moment is a new one from me, and I'm currently working with some good friends of mine to create a 2-hour tabletop gaming album, all with this similar grimdark vibe. If you like the sound of that and you want to be kept up to date, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any announcements. Second, a massive thanks to Andre, the Dragon's Rest, Alexander and Ataris for joining our Patreon since our last video. If you'd like to join up from just $2 a month and help us make cool videos like this, follow the link in the description. Also, shout out to Iceman213 who correctly guessed the warband when I posted this photo on Instagram. Follow me at MWMinis if you haven't already, obviously. Another huge thanks goes to Ricc at Marionville Models, a cool independent gaming store up in Scotland. Now long-time viewers might remember Ricc as the guy who painted up his sandstone Necrons even better than mine. Well, anyway, he sorted me out with a really great deal on the Shadowspear box set, and I wanted to let him know that I really appreciate it. This isn't sponsored or anything, but I told him I'd be mentioning him in the video, and he offered to give UK customers free shipping if they use the code MIDWINTERMINIS at checkout. How nice is that? Now for more details, check the video description. And finally, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're going to paint your Chaos Space Marines up like this, or have any questions or suggestions, please leave a comment. I love reading them and I reply to every single one. Now that's it for this episode. Bye for now.